Do I have to press anything? Do I have to press anything? Ultimately, our stance is this, that if you want kids to start studying, if you want them to dream big, and if you want them to progress society forward, that's when you need to give them hope by the end, because that's the foundation of who they are in the future. We think that that's the ultimate stance that opposition side is trying to stand for, and we don't think that necessarily teaching them the harsh realities will necessarily materialize into those benefits. Two clashes today. Firstly, who better prepares children for their life, and secondly, who is able to better advance society forward, right? Now let me move on to my first clash, on the idea of who better prepares children for their life. So what their entire case line is basically this, that the education right now doesn't tell kids what to do when they fail. And that's why when minorities start failing or children start failing because they cannot be competitive inside society, they lose their self-esteem and therefore they will give up at any time, right? But the first thing we told you right now is that we think that we already told you throughout the bench, like the kids' motivation foundation is very different from adults, right? We think in the status quo right now, when you're a kid, when you're protected under the school system, like those type of things are not necessarily as difficult to deal with because there's always teachers trying to help you and those type of things, right? But the thing is, the harsh reality that comes afterwards is when they grow into becoming an adult, right? But what we told you under our side is that learning the harsh realities when you become an adult is not necessarily something that's bad, that's harmful at the end of the day. And the reason I would like to extend this by talking about the idea of kids' emotion, right? We think that at the end of the day, if you want to be able to allow for those kids to be able to deal with the future, firstly, you need to build a foundation of hope, right? A lot of times when you tell kids constantly that you cannot achieve anything in life because, sorry, there's a structural problem about society and you can't do anything about it, that's when they stop fighting, right? When they see a problem happen, that's when they shut down. Because now that there's a problem, I have to accept it because that's how society works. That's how their mentality will become, right? But furthermore, we do a comparative to our side. What happens is that these individuals don't necessarily say that, oh, now that I can't achieve this, I'm going to stop doing it, right? But rather because they have that hope foundation, that's when they say, okay, if I fail on this aspect, if I cannot progress to achieve feminism in this way, then maybe I want to find another alternative. Maybe I want to find another way to convince another group of individuals to do so. We think that when you have these type of hope, that means that they never lose hope on the ability that they think that society can be better in the future. That's when they find other things to do. That's when they find other ways that are more effective. We think that's the type of mentality these children will have that will allow for them to be able to prepare for future life, right? But furthermore, we tell you that when you teach them since young, that's even more detrimental to their own cause, right? Because we think that a lot of times these emotions of these children are easily very affected, right? When you're a child, when somebody scolds you, already start to cry. Those are the type of things that children are in the first place, right? Therefore, we think that when you deal with children, you necessarily have to be very careful about how you actually raise them up, because everything means that in the future, that's how they think, that's how they feel, right? That's why we don't want for us to be able to press down their self-esteem in the first place without actually telling them that there is still hope for society, something that their side cannot prove exclusivity on. Before I move on to my next class, yes.
The most thing on our side, we try to be more light and discourage. But this is a fun school, building your character and putting back up. In your society, you say in economy, no job, what kind of social network do you have to say?
Well, Kevin already told you, right, that at the end of the day, when you grow up to be an adult, that's when you have other motivation apart from like the goals you want to achieve as well. You need to be able to sustain in life. But furthermore, we can tell you that when you're an adult, it doesn't necessarily mean you're alone, right? You still have people around you. You still have your family around you. That doesn't necessarily mean that suddenly when you're an adult, you can't cope with it, especially because of the fact that individuals also still learn after the age of 18, right? We think in the status quo, when they're more mature, they're able to deal with these problems without being more swayed emotionally. We think it's still better under our side. Now let me move on to my second clash point on who better advances societies on 3 levels, right? Firstly, who's able to fix problems. Secondly, who is able to actually allow for schools to develop programs for children. And thirdly, who is better able to allow for social movements to become more successful, right? Here's the thing about the first idea. The argument they told us about is on the idea of how reality is grounded without telling these children the problem, right? That's why if the children doesn't know what the problem is, they cannot find the solution to it. What we say to that is that firstly, we think that likely they're already going to see the problems, right? It's very evident when it goes on news that people are dying. There's things like ISIS going on. There's things like Orlando shooting going on. But furthermore, we think that it's not necessarily the case that if these children don't know now, it doesn't mean that they can learn about it later, right? When they go into university, that's when they see things like people approaching them a certain way, them being discriminated a certain way. They can still learn about the system and how to tackle the system later. What's important is that they have the hope and they have the character to be able to deal with those problems and to want to deal with those problems, right? So what therefore is important, right? We think this argument allows what we propose to your side rather is that we actually allow for these children to set larger goals for themselves and to be able to set breaking goals, right? Because what's the mentality of a person who is a pessimist and who thinks that reality is what it is right now, right? We think these individuals are less likely going to set goals that are actually something society needs. For example, if society has a problem about racial minorities, they're likely less likely to want to actually try to achieve for things like being the president of the United States, but rather they want to set for a pragmatic goal because they understand that society is harsh, and therefore they probably would want to settle rather for things like a job in the company to be able to work as an employee for one of the CEOs, right? We think those things are detrimentally harmful, especially in competitive society that they propose to us, because that means that society will not be able to progress further. That means that people don't necessarily want to become more competitive, that people are going to remain stagnant in that way. Second problem they told us is on the idea of how schools apparently will want to remove helpful programs, because apparently people don't want to demand for programs anymore because of the fact that they don't know about the system, right? Firstly, parents are there for the reason. They already know that there are harsh realities. Probably they are the ones who are going to ask the school to give these gifted programs. But secondly, schools have a natural incentive to want to send their children to the best schools because of their own reputation, right? We don't understand why this is a problem they can propose under their side. Last argument that they talked about is on the idea of social movement. How black kids will never now will feel even more demoralized because of the fact that they don't know about the structural problem. Firstly, we already told you that probably these kids have faced discrimination since they were younger. We don't think it's much more beneficial for the school to tell them and actually make them even feel worse about themselves in the first place. But secondly, once you tell these kids that they cannot do better than they are right now, those are the type of things allow for these children to stop being optimistic, right? That's when you stop social movements from progressing, because you're necessarily telling them that nothing is going to change. You're not doing any good for society. Ultimately, we think that our side is the one that provides children with hope, provide them with a foundation of building character for these individuals to be able to deal with things in the future, and we think it's not necessarily the case. We have to educate them about the harsh reality right now. We're very proud to oppose.
Fine. What are you talking about? My speeches are always intuitive. Picture this. So, woman of the house, okay? So, you're in the school, okay? And you say, Mom, I want to become an engineer. That's what I do. That's how I roll, you know? All right. So, the school has two choices. The first choice is to say, yeah, sorry, that's not how it works. You're not that you can't make it, but the society constantly oppress you. I don't think you're able to do that, because that's just how harsh the reality is. Versus, if you work hard, you can do it, right? So we think that we stand more on the if you work hard, you can do it part, rather than telling them the harsh realities. Now, I get what they're trying to say. They're trying to say, yeah. We're trying to tell them that this is how the society is. Oh, by the way, if you work hard, you can do it. Yeah, but the thing is, the moment you tell them how bad the society is at the age of 12 years old, they pretty much lose hope already. So, okay. So, okay. Let's break the chicken and egg scenario, right? So they say, Kev, but you never, this team never told us how, just because you take away that incentive, you lose hope. Actually, I kind of did. Because I told you that when you're an adult, you have different responsibilities. That becomes a motivator for you to push on even though you fail. At a younger age, there are no other reasons as to why you want to push on. It's just really hard for a 12-year-old or even a high school kid to know what they're going to do in 10 years and fear for failure in 10 years. So our side is more intuitively sound. But okay, let's say it's a chicken and egg, okay? Let's say it's a draw, that we're not able to prove that they will lose hope, and they're not, but then it's not like they're able to prove that they're going to work harder, right? So let's just come up with a conclusion that some will work harder and some will lose hope. We still win, right? Because do you really want to take that chance when it comes to the educational system? Shouldn't the purpose of educational system is to have everyone work hard instead, right? We definitely take that point. So in order for them to win this debate, they need to prove that the status quo is bad, and after implementation, it will become better, right? Let's take a look at why they say status quo is bad. They said, yeah, educational reform, kids are blaming the system. I'm like, kids should try to blame the system instead of blaming themselves. We're like, no. Kids probably should blame themselves for not working hard enough. It's really just too young for them to blame the system right now. This is not like they can change it, right? So we think that if the system is bad, there are other incentives for other people to make that structural change, but it's just not the kids' burden to do that. And it's very unfair for them to do so. Then they talk about, but the racial structure, right? Like black people or minorities, they should know, and so that they can be better prepared. Well, the response is, but then this is the problem with you not clarifying what harsh reality is, right? By harsh reality, do you mean to tell them that this is the way it is, deal with it? Or do you mean to say, if you work harder, it will change, right? Because they seem to put the blame on us, that we are blindly, making the world better, which is not true, right? We're encouraging them. We're telling them, look, we're sorry that happened to you, but things will get better. Don't give up. That's optimism. And you can claim that that's the same thing, that you're squirreling the motion. All right. Then they said, and then they claim that after this, the reality will become, after their proposal, things will become better. And they never really told us that, right? Because we already told you that responsibilities at every stage of life is different. As you get older, you get more and more responsibilities, and you learn to cope with it bit by bit. The problem with telling them 80 years worth of responsibility to a 12-year-old is that they tend to want to quit. They already kind of want to quit right now already, even with the hope, given. We just don't see why they won't quit then. Because when you tell them that even if you work hard, sorry, Tommy, it's not going to work out, or it may or may not work out. Oh yeah, but by the way, don't give up. Then who's gonna want to do that at the end of the day, right? We argue we are definitely more intuitively sound, and we're very proud of the host. Thank you.
We would like to thank the opposition reply. Now we would like to end today's debate with the government reply.
We know that Kevin lost the debate when he tried to say that we are squirreling the motion, right? Because at the very end of the debate, the motion stated very clearly that we only need to make a distinction on why we would rather include the teaching of harsh reality than overemphasis on meritocracy to begin with. That's why, just because people kept telling me that there are possibilities of me losing this tournament, it doesn't mean that I have to believe him and thinking that, shit, I'm losing this tournament regardless of what happens, right? Because I still think that I still have a possibility of me winning this tournament despite another possibility of me losing the tournament. And because of this reason, we don't think that harsh reality equates pessimism, because at the end of the day, what is realistic is that you either had the possibility of failing or you either had the possibility of being successful. It's not that you are definitely failing because you're black, you definitely can't do anything. That's not what we are telling kids, right? Because we think that's pessimism, and that's not what the reality of life is supposed to be like. That's why we think this debate still stands strongly, and given that they're not able to make the kind of distinction, they don't deserve a victory of this motion at all. I have two things I'm going to talk about. Firstly, will teaching harsh reality should we let kids internalize life experiences without proper preparation? Or secondly, will teaching harsh reality takes away incentive to strive harder in a society? Firstly, should we let kids internalize life experiences without proper preparation? So this is the best case scenario, right? That because they grow up with some sort of responsibility, assuming they have family, assuming they're able to have friends, that they're able to deal with life later on. Sure, that could be a possibility, but that doesn't mean that everyone has a same capacity to be able to cope with life in the future, right? Because they don't know, if they don't know social reality in the very first place, and they're not being prepared for failures. That's why things like suicide, that's why things like them internalizing the blame for themselves happens, right? That's why fresh graduates sometimes go into a massive depression simply because they can't find a job, even with high aspiration and expectation they have after they graduate from good school. The worst case scenario from our side, right, is that kids who are too young to understand failures. The worst thing that's gonna happen is that you cry to your teachers. And I don't understand. I'm gonna fail. What am I gonna do? The worst thing you had happen is having a teacher correct those kids, right? That at that point in time they're still in classroom. It means that attitude adjustment is still possible. It means that your character can always be reshaped all the time. It means that you still are able to fix the kind of thinking, the kind of attitude they have towards life. But when you leave them alone in a harsh society without proper preparation, what happens is they have no one to ask for. It's much easier for me as a kid to ask my teacher what to do with life rather than me as a 30 years old to ask my parents or ask my friends how to cope with life, because you are at that point in time you're too afraid to ask anybody to change yourself already. That's why we think it's significantly better, even under our worst case scenario, to let kids prepare for their life experiences before they actually experience one. Secondly, will teaching harsh reality takes away the incentive to strive. They talk about how this is very pessimistic. They will suddenly stop hoping for their future just because we do so. The question we have to ask is this: why must you give hope at the expense of societal understanding, right? Because we think both things can come hand in hand. Because people already have a natural incentive to strive for the better. No one wants to fail in life. By teaching them harsh reality doesn't mean that it takes away their hope and incentive to strive harder. It just means that they need to be able to readjust their attitude towards society, that there are possibility of failures, but perhaps they have to work harder in that regard. And what they're doing right there is that they're putting an empty promise of hope which hit minority or failing children the hardest, right? And this was in my speech. When I talk about how these people, the more they try, the more they attribute the blame for themselves because they just think they don't work hard enough. Even though the failure is not them, it's because the system does not accommodate these people because of the societal oppression that currently exists under the society. That's why we want to change the narrative, that the school should stop blaming kids, that we need to have an awareness that we should stop blaming those individuals and try in the future create some sort of advances to help address this problem. And that must come since young age, to explore this kind of societal structure that's currently harmful to these people. I'm extremely proud to win this debate.